Hello music fans, I'm on the second last video of my series of the top 10 albums of every year in the 1970s. This video is about 1978 and we're going to talk about some mostly prog rock albums, maybe a little bit of metal and other types of rock here. And before I jump into my top 10, I'll start with an honorable mention, which is Breakfast in America by Supertramp. This is more of a pop album. It's their sixth album. It has a lot of big radio hits like the Logical Song, Goodbye Stranger, and Take the Long Way Home. Previously, Supertramp was more of a progressive rock band. This is where they went pop and soft radio rock, but still kept some of that artsy flair to their music. This is actually my favorite Supertramp album, even though it's pop and I usually like the progressive stuff better. For Supertramp, I actually like when they do pop. Now let's jump in with my number 10, which is Infinity by Journey. This is more of a straightforward rock album as well, their fourth album, but it's their first to feature their legendary singer Steve Perry. Features the big hits Lights and Wheel in the Sky. My number 9 is Killing Machine by Judas Priest. This is a heavy metal album. It was called Killing Machine in the UK, but it was called Hellbent for Leather in the US. Due to controversy over a school shooting. I actually prefer the US version to the UK version because the US version has one extra song on it that's a Fleetwood Mac cover that's really well done. It's the Green Manalishi with the Two-Pronged Crown. Number 8 is Tormato by Yes. This is a progressive rock album, their ninth album. Definitely not their best work, but far from their worst. I'd put it near the middle of the road when ranking Yes's large discography of 23 albums. It's still a pretty good album, but just isn't as memorable as most of their work up to this point. Number 7 is Pieces of 8 by Styx. This is another progressive rock album. It's their 8th album. Features some great hits like Blue Collar Man, Long Nights, and Renegade, and some cool deeper cuts like Lords of the Ring and many more. Number 6 is an Italian progressive rock album called Di Terra by Banco del Mutuo Soccorso. This is their 7th album, and this one's entirely instrumental and recorded with an orchestra, the Orchestra dell'Unione Musicisti di Roma. Very awesome instrumental album, and I don't usually love instrumental albums. Usually I prefer albums with vocals, but this is one of the greatest of the instrumental prog albums, so had to put it on the list. Number 5 is Incantations by Mike Oldfield. This is another progressive rock album. It's his 4th album, and this one's a double album that features 4 side-long epics. It's basically his take on what Yes did with Tales from Topographic Oceans 5 years earlier. This is primarily instrumental, but has some lyrical sections. It's got a lot of New Age influence and some Celtic vibes as well. All the vocals on the album are female vocals, though there aren't too many vocal moments on the album. Some of them are done by his sister Sally Oldfield, some of the vocals are done by Maddie Pryor, and some of the vocals are done by the Queen's College Girls Choir. There's also quite a bit of flute on this album. Lots of interesting sounds on here. Mike Oldfield always has like great atmosphere and sonic world that he brings his listeners into. Number 4 is Pyramid by the Alan Parsons Project, another progressive rock album. It's their 3rd album. The sound design on here, just the production is excellent. Style-wise, it really sounds ahead of its time as well. It reminds me of the 80s sound, but it's only 1978. Number 3 is And Then There Were Three by Genesis. This is where Genesis starts to go down the pop rock road. It's their 9th album, and it's the first after the departure of guitarist Steve Hackett, and the first that had more pop rock than prog. Even though it's still a nice blend of both, it's still very artsy as far as pop is concerned. It ends with the big pop ballad Follow You, Follow Me, which is a catchy and well-known song, but some of the deeper cuts on the album also have some great progressive moments as well. Number 2 is Jazz by Queen. This is a hard rock album. It's their 7th album. It starts with a really strange song, Mustafa, which sounds kind of like a Muslim called a prayer song or something. And it also features the big hits Fat Bottom Girls, Bicycle Race, and Don't Stop Me Now, which are all great, catchy songs. Fun album to listen to. And my number 1 of 1978 is probably not a big surprise, and it's Hemispheres by Rush. I have the 40th anniversary vinyl here. It's a progressive rock album, their 6th album, possibly their most progressive album. Side 1 is an 18-minute long epic called Cygnus X1 Book 2, Hemispheres. Side 2 has Circumstances, The Trees, which I love and is probably my favorite song here. But it also has La Villa Strangiato, an exercise in self-indulgence, which is an amazing instrumental song, likely their best instrumental song ever, even though I'll always love, cherish, and remember YYZ from Moving Pictures as well, as it was the first instrumental Rush song that I've heard. And that's it for my top 10 albums of 1978. What are your favorites? Let me know down in the comments below. What do you think of the picks that I had on this list? Also let me know. And stay tuned for my last video in the series, which will be 1979, coming out soon in the coming days. And then maybe I'm going to make a summary video here where I give my top 25 albums of the entire decade, where I pick the 25 best that I've talked about in all 10 of my videos. So I guess in these 10 videos I would have mentioned 100 albums already, but if you want to hear me just talk about my top 25 from the decade, I'll probably do a video on that as well. So stay tuned for that. Peace out.